I'm Abigail.
And I'm Keith.
And this is the Global Treasures Podcast. We'll cover different World Heritage Sites each episode.
These sites have been identified as having outstanding universal value
because they have cultural and/or natural significance that is so exceptional that it transcends national boundaries and is of importance to present and future generations.
There are 1,199 sites across the world, with more being added every single year.
We'll explore the history, legends, travel tips, and so much more.
Welcome to Season 2, where we'll explore the 45 sites that UNESCO added in 1979.
In this episode, Keith and I will be discussing the Auschwitz-Birkenau Nazi concentration and extermination camp, located in southern Poland. I think that this is one of the few episodes that truly warrants a trigger warning. There are going to be descriptions of some violent events, so please be mindful of your emotional well-being.
In the heart of Poland's countryside, amidst the suburbs of Auschwitz, lay a place of unparalleled horror and suffering, Auschwitz-Birkenau. It was the principal and most notorious of the 6 concentration and extermination camps established by Nazi Germany during World War II, a grim monument to one of humanity's darkest chapters.
In its sprawling expanse, there were 2 distinct but interconnected camps, Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II-Birkenau. Each bore witness to the atrocities committed within, bearing the weight of a genocide that defies comprehension.
Initially conceived as a concentration camp for Poles under Nazi occupation, Auschwitz evolved into a site of systematic murder. Its purpose morphed into implementing the final solution, the Nazi policy aimed at the systematic extermination of the Jewish people of Europe.
Between 1942 and 1944, Auschwitz reached the pinnacle of its infamy as a mass extermination camp. Over 1 million Jewish men, women, and children, along with tens of thousands of Polish and other nationalities, met their tragic end within its confines. The Roma and Sinti people from various European countries, members of the LGBTQ+ community, and those living with disabilities were also among the thousands who perished here.
Historical investigations have revealed the staggering toll of Auschwitz's brutality, with an estimated 1.5 million people, predominantly those of Jewish faith, subjected to starvation, torture, and murder. These sites stand as a stark reminder of the consequences of unchecked hatred and bigotry.
Today, Auschwitz-Birkenau serves as a solemn memorial to the victims of the Holocaust, a place of remembrance and reflection. Amidst the echoes of the past, it compels visitors to confront the horrors of history and to pledge never again.
We both feel that it is important to take a look at the history of these sites to try to gain at least a cursory understanding of the gargantuan acts of brutality and murder that took place. So on September 1st, 1939, Europe was full of the rumblings of war as Nazi Germany's invasion of Poland plunged the world into conflicts the likes of which had never been seen. In the wake of the invasion, a shadow fell over Poland's Jewish population as the Nazis unleashed a wave of violence, massacring many and confining the others to ghettos where they faced starvation, deprivation, and despair. As the war continued, the Nazis ruthlessly targeted Poland's intellectual and political elite, seeking to squash any resistance to their regime.
This oppression reached a crescendo on January 25, 1940, when the SS, the elite Nazi Guard, made a decision to erect a concentration camp near Auschwitz and create a name that would soon become synonymous with evil, Auschwitz. In May and June of 1940, the first prisoners arrived, heralding the beginning of a nightmare that would haunt humanity for generations to come.
Among these arrivals were approximately 30 German inmates, labeled as professional criminals by the SS, selected from the Sachsenhausen concentration camp near Berlin. June 14th marked another milestone as German authorities in occupied Poland deported 728 Polish prisoners from a prison in Tarnow to Auschwitz, marking the first of many such transports.
As rumors of the atrocities happening at Auschwitz spread, resistance fighters relayed the harrowing truth to the exiled Polish government in London, hoping to galvanize support among the Allies. Meanwhile, in March 1941, Heinrich Himmler, the sinister architect of the Nazi terror, inspected Auschwitz, his visit fueled by concerns over the camp's capacity to accommodate the swelling ranks of prisoners.
Because nearby factories use forced labor, Himmler ordered the expansion of Auschwitz I and the construction of a new camp near Birkenau, intended to accommodate an expected influx of 100,000 Soviet prisoners of war. Himmler also ordered that the camp would supply 100,000 prisoners for forced labor to construct an IG Farben factory complex at Drori, about a mile away.
As the war continued in Europe, Himmler visited Auschwitz again in 1942 to bear witness to the gas chambers, where prisoners were slaughtered in the name of Nazi ideology.
In June of 1941, the fragile peace in Eastern Europe shattered as Germany, completely disregarding a pact made in 1939, launched an invasion of the Soviet Union. The Nazis quickly advanced into the country. Among the casualties of war were thousands of Soviet soldiers who found themselves captured by the invading German forces and transported to the two camps.
On September 3, 1941, the first prisoners met their gruesome fate in the depths of the Auschwitz concentration camp, in a makeshift gas chamber in the cellar of Block 11 of the camp. In a grisly experiment, the SS tested Zyklon B gas, a deadly substance manufactured by IG Farben, on 600 Soviet prisoners of war and 250 other ill and weak prisoners. This awful moment marked the dawn of a new era of mass murder, as Zyklon B became the killing agent for the yet-to-be-constructed Auschwitz-Birkenau Killing Center.
The evil of the leadership of the Nazis in Germany reached an entirely new level when in January 1942, the blueprint for the final solution was written, revealing the Nazis' plan to eradicate Europe's Jewish population. SS Chief Heinrich Himmler, in a meeting with Richard Glücks, the inspector of concentration camps, outlined the details of the deportation of 100,000 Jewish men and 50,000 Jewish women from Germany to Auschwitz, where they would be condemned to a life of forced labor within the camp.
On February 15, 1942, the first transport of Jews from Bitham, a town now under German control in annexed Upper Silesia, arrived in Auschwitz. Upon arrival, the SS camp authorities kill all those on the transport immediately.
March 1, 1942 saw the opening of Auschwitz II Birkenau. Its opening marked the first mass deportation of foreign Jews to the camp. This group included 69,000 from France and another 27,000 from Slovakia.
In May 1942, a large number of Jews were sent to Auschwitz from various places. 300,000 from Poland, while Germany and Austria sent 23,000. On the 4th of May, a chilling event unfolded as the first selection took place at Birkenau. The arriving prisoners were systematically divided into two groups, those chosen for forced labor and those destined for the gas chambers.
June 10, 1942, witnessed an act of defiance as 7 prisoners managed to escape from Birkenau. Their getaway, however, came at a high cost, as 300 of their fellow inmates were executed in retaliation by the SS guards.
As the summer months passed, the steady stream of victims continued to flow into Auschwitz. In July, 60,000 Jews were sent from Holland, followed by 25,000 from Belgium and 10,000 from Yugoslavia in August.
On October 30, 1942, the industrial Auschwitz III Monowitz camp was opened, further expanding the network of concentration camps. Thousands more were imprisoned, including 46,000 Jews from today's Czech Republic. In December of 1942, 700 Jews from Norway were deported to Auschwitz, adding to the staggering number of people brought into the camps during the year. By the end of 1942, the German SS and police had deported a total of approximately 175,000 Jews to Auschwitz.
1943 began with the German SS and police force deporting a further 105,000 Jews to Auschwitz by March 31st. In a further escalation of hatred, on January 29, 1943, the Reich Central Office for Security issued a decree expanding the targets of Nazi persecution to include designated Roma gypsies residing in Germany, Austria, and the Protectorate of Bohemia and Moravia.
Just a month later, on February 26th, the first transport of Roma from Germany arrived at Auschwitz. Families were torn apart as they were herded into the newly established Zigeunerlager, forever known as the Gypsy Camp, within Auschwitz-Birkenau. Over the course of the year, more than 18,000 Roma would be imprisoned there, with eventually almost 23,000 in total, with almost 21,000 of those being murdered in the gas chambers or succumbing to starvation and disease.
Meanwhile, the deportation of Jews continued unabated. In March of 1943, 55,000 Jews were sent from Greece to Auschwitz. From April to May of 1944, a further approximate 160,000 Jews were deported to the camp. On May 2, 1944, the arrival of the first two transports of 438,000 Hungarian Jews at Auschwitz marked another tragic milestone in the Holocaust. Around this time, Allied reconnaissance planes captured images of the camp, spotting the gas chambers and smoke rising from the crematoria. In an attempt to disrupt the Nazi war machine, Britain and the United States later bombed the Monowich Industrial Complex, a part of the Auschwitz camp complex.
July 6, 1944, brought a glimmer of hope amidst the darkness of Auschwitz, as a deportation of Hungarian Jews was abruptly halted by the order of Miklos Horthy, the regent of Hungary, who learned the dark truth about the camps. The last transport from Hungary arrived at the camp on July 11th. August 2nd marked the final harrowing chapter for the so-called Gypsy Camp in Auschwitz-Birkenau, as up to 5,000 Roma were murdered inside the camp. As resistance flared in the Warsaw Uprising, 13,000 Poles were sent to the camp from the Warsaw Ghetto, and a further 67,000 Jews were sent from the Łódź Ghetto, also in Poland. From April 1944 to November 1944, the machinery of death operated relentlessly as SS and police authorities deported more than 585,000 Jews to Auschwitz.
October 7, 1944, witnessed an act of resistance as members of the Jewish Special Detachment, called Sonderkommando, staged an uprising within Auschwitz. In a daring bid for freedom and defiance to the Nazis, they successfully blew up Crematorium 4 with gunpowder smuggled out of nearby factories, striking a blow against the SS. Yet, their valiant stand was met with swift and brutal reprisal, as the SS quashed the revolt and executed all the members of the Sonderkommando. In January, just weeks before Soviet forces liberated the camp, the SS will also hang 4 women who were found to have smuggled gunpowder into the camp. As Soviet forces drew closer to the camps, SS Chief Heinrich Himmler issued an order for the destruction of the Auschwitz-Birkenau gas chambers and crematoria on November 25, 1944. During this deconstruction attempt, prisoners were forced to dismantle and dynamite the structures, bringing an end to the mass gassing.
On January 12, 1945, Soviet offensives breached the German defenses on the Vistula River, allowing them to take Warsaw and advance rapidly on Krakow and Oswiecim. As the Soviets approached the camps, the SS evacuated the prisoners of the Auschwitz concentration camp complex to the west. Tens of thousands of prisoners, mostly Jews, are forced to march in the winter cold to the city of Wojcislaw and Gliwice in the western part of Upper Silesia. During these death marches, SS guards shoot anyone who cannot continue on their own. In Wojcislaw and Gliwice, In the bitter cold of January, the prisoners were herded into unheated freight trains destined for the concentration camps in Germany and Austria, including Flossenwerk, Sachsenhausen, Grossrosen, Buchenwald, Dachau, and Mauthausen. All in all, nearly 60,000 prisoners are forced on these death marches, and as many as 15,000 of those die. Thousands more were killed in the days before the evacuation.
Finally, on January 27, 1945, Soviet troops entered the gates of Auschwitz, liberating approximately 7,000 prisoners who remained in the camp. Yet, the liberation came too late for those who had perished within its walls. Among the victims were nearly 1 million Jews from across Europe, 74,000 Poles, 21,000 Roma, and 15,000 Soviet prisoners of war. Their lives ended by the Holocaust perpetrated by the Nazis.
The remnants of Auschwitz stand as witness to the horrors perpetrated within its walls. From the fortifications to the chilling remnants of gas chambers and cremation ovens, every element of the camp serves as a reminder of the depths that humans can delve into in order to harm one another.
Personal belongings at the site tell the stories of countless lives lost, bearing testimony to the victims' existence and the evil that stripped them of their humanity. The camp, with its combination of extermination and forced labor, became a symbol of the most horrific form of suffering. To this end, UNESCO designated this site due to the deliberate genocide of the Nazi regime. Auschwitz bears irrefutable evidence to one of the greatest crimes ever perpetrated against humanity. But it is also a monument to the strength of the human spirit, which, in appalling conditions of adversity, resisted the efforts of the German Nazi regime to suppress freedom and free thought and to wipe out whole races. The site stands as a place of memory for all humankind to reflect upon the Holocaust, a memory of a dark chapter in human history, and as a warning sign to younger generations of the consequences of extreme ideologies.
Well, this does not sound like a place one would want to visit, and I can sure understand this. I actually think it's important that you do. I visited the Mauthausen concentration camp with a large group of American high school students, and I can tell you, it had a powerful impression on every single one of us, almost immediately. I'm not usually keyed into the quote-unquote feelings of a place, but I can share this much. These sites simply feel evil. I actually have no other way of explaining it. We had almost 150 high schoolers with us in the group. Within the moment of entering the gates, every single one of us was completely silent, with many breaking into tears immediately, even though all of them were laughing and enjoying their trip together just an hour before. The absolute power that came over us as a group was no joke, and certainly not something that one easily forgets.
I can only imagine. I would struggle as an adult visiting these places, let alone as a teenager. I think visiting these sites are so important to truly understand the extent of cruelty we show to one another, but again, also, to be reminded of how strong humans can be when faced with adversity, and why we need to continue to fight prejudice and discrimination so history doesn't repeat itself. I'll cover how to get there and some information about getting tickets. If you're flying in from a country outside of Poland, you'll want to fly into John Paul II International Airport in Krakow. From there, you can take a train, bus, or taxi to Auschwitz. While the public transportation is reliable because Europe is fantastic in that arena, you may want to rent a car if you're going to be traveling through other parts of the country. In terms of booking tours or buying tickets, you must book passes online in advance, preferably a few months in advance. You can't walk in off the street and get tickets on a whim, as 2.3 million people on average visit the site each year. Arrive early because they have a thorough security screening process, and make sure you have your ID. Expect to spend 2.5 to 3 hours, or even longer, depending on whether you take a tour or explore independently. You can book tours in multiple languages, and they are not cheap. However, you cannot tour the memorials independently if you're in an organized group. You do need a guide. However, those visiting individually can tour Auschwitz I and Auschwitz II Birkenau sites independently. This is not a site recommended for children under 14 due to the sensitive nature. Also, know that for conservation purposes, the grounds of the museum may be closed to visitors. Just a tip, make sure you dress appropriately. I would suggest layers, as there is a lot of rain throughout the year, more in spring and summer months. Summer gets into the mid-70s Fahrenheit and can be quite humid, with the winters being snowy and cold with lots of fog.
Well, I remember not being able to do pretty much anything significant after visiting a camp, and was pretty much emotionally ruined for at least the rest of the day. Abigail, would you suggest maybe coupling this with any other visits in the area?
Honestly, even for those who don't typically get emotional, you may want to plan to visit Auschwitz standalone because you might find that you feel a bit emotionally drained afterwards. You may not feel up to visiting other museums or places after. It can feel surreal and hard to digest in the moment, but then it might hit you hours or even days later. If you want to consider bundling it with other sites, Welichka salt mines would be a good choice and happens to be another World Heritage site we covered previously. I'd encourage you to go back and listen to that episode if you haven't already, if you're interested. This visit could be just the transition you need, as the salt mines are truly magnificent. You can check out Season 1, Episode 11 if you want to learn more. In town, the Zamek Museum and Church of Assumption of the Blessed Virgin Mary are two notable sites to visit. The church is home to life-size statues of St. Peter and St. Paul. If you're lodging in Oswiecim proper, the town has a variety of chain hotels and smaller independently run hotels. I was a bit surprised I didn't see many homestay options.
Again, as mentioned before, I really wasn't ready to do anything quote-unquote fun after a visit to a camp. But I have to ask, what's the food like in this part of Poland? I know we covered a little bit on Season 1, Episode 11.
Yeah, so the population is a bit bigger than I expected, so they have more restaurants than I expected. And the population's around 39,000 residents. In terms of food, I was surprised at the wide variety of cuisines available. You can get pizza, sushi, Italian, and then, of course, the traditional Polish dishes like potato pancakes and schnitzel, which is breaded meat usually served with potatoes. In my opinion, the more oil it's fried in, the better.
Well, I do remember how good the potato pancakes and the schnitzel were. Well, they were pretty good. I'm not sure that I could eat it every day. Okay, as with all sites, Abigail takes us on a view of the legends and supernatural phenomena. I'm sure that this site has its share. So, Abigail, what'd you find out?
So, with such a sordid history like this, no surprise that visitors claim Auschwitz is haunted by the ghosts of prisoners and Nazi soldiers in full garb. People have reported taking photos that had orbs, which are transparent balls of light that are believed to be spirits. Another visitor was glancing through the photos she took during her trip to Auschwitz, which featured her and her daughter. She was stunned when she saw a gentleman standing behind them, donning a gray-blue striped outfit, an exact replica of the uniform prisoners were forced to wear. She swears he was not there when she visited, and Auschwitz does not do reenactments. Those taking tours claim to hear sounds of screaming around the gas chambers, and staff members have reported finding doors and windows closed that they specifically opened when they were the only ones working that night. Again, no surprise, this is a hot spot for ghost hunters. Those who have gone claim that there were sudden, unexplained changes in temperature in certain areas. Also, EVPs catch noises or cries that cannot be explained.
So I'm a scientist and I probably should know this, so forgive me for asking. What's an EVP?
Oh no, that's a great question actually. It stands for electronic voice phenomena, which are recorded sounds that sometimes you cannot audibly hear until you play it back, and are believed to be voices of the dead. Usually, it's just a phrase or a sentence that's uttered. Outside of paranormal phenomena, there's a major conspiracy around the Holocaust, and that's that it didn't happen or was exaggerated. Holocaust deniers argue that it was Jewish propaganda and that the extermination camps weren't actually used to kill anyone. Some also believe that the 6 million number used to quote the number of deaths represents those who died of disease and other quote-unquote natural causes, inferring that less people were murdered than the number we know today.
I'm guessing that some of these people that are deniers never traveled to one of these sites. It's stunning that there are people who honestly believe this.
No, I completely agree. So I'm glad to end talking about historic preservation in this episode because it feels like the light at the end of a dark tunnel. Auschwitz might be one of the most impressively and carefully preserved UNESCO sites on the list, period, for which I am so grateful. The museum has numerous items that have been donated by survivors or victims' families. Anything not being displayed is kept in well-maintained storage to keep it safe. There is risk of flooding, and lots of foot traffic from the millions of visitors requires that they keep tabs on trash, etc. However, the buildings and infrastructure are mostly unchanged since 1945. In Birkenau, some of the historic buildings didn't survive, but that's only because they were built to be temporary by the Nazis and built poorly as a result. The site does have some potential issues to contend with, including difficulty in preserving the memory of events. As in, we can't forget what happened in Auschwitz during the Holocaust, or risk another cycle of intolerance and cruelty against others in the future. With survivors aging and passing away, it's important to capture all of the stories firsthand. Some countries have laws requiring schools to have curriculum centered around the Holocaust, so we continue to pass on the knowledge to future generations. To quote UNESCO, "This site is a monument to the strength of the human spirit, in which appalling conditions of adversity resisted." Thank you for joining us for another episode of the Global Treasures podcast. If you would like to support the show, you can subscribe at Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You can also check us out on YouTube and TikTok, and please tell your friends about us.
See you next time when we explore Białowieża Forest in Belarus and Poland.